everyone. It's Natasha Boluifa from PenPadPurpose.com with the last installment in this month's SyncUp series, Righteous Rebellion. Today's segment is titled Rebel with a Cause. For the next few minutes, we're going to be syncing up with God about the righteous rebellion of none other than Jesus Christ. Our text for today is Matthew chapter 12, verses 1 through 14. Now, one thing that I don't think gets talked enough about is how often Jesus rebelled. He rebelled against sexism by talking to women and even teaching them the scriptures. He rebelled against classism by interacting with people that others shunned as socially undesirable, people like tax collectors and prostitutes. But most notably, we see Jesus throughout the Gospels rebelling against the culture of legalism, particularly the Pharisees, one of the ancient sects of Jews that had a lot of influence during his time. Now, culture in this context is defined as the behaviors and beliefs characteristics of a particular social, ethnic, or age group. A culture of legalism focuses their group's behaviors and beliefs on rules, the definition of rules, the interpretation of rules, the application of rules. You get the picture. No one did this better than the Pharisees. They had a tendency to take God's commands given in the Bible and add a hedge of other mind-numbingly exhaustive and specific rules around those commands to make sure that no one ever came close to breaking the actual command. Which is really ironic considering one of God's commands is not to add a word to his command. Anyway. They did this hedge thing really well, and one particular command they did it to was the catalyst of many of their conflicts with Jesus, the righteous rebel. It was over the Sabbath. Now you may be saying, hey, hold on, the Sabbath was a real command from God. It wasn't made up. And that's true. Exodus 20 verses 8 through 11 is all about not doing our work on the Sabbath, but keeping it holy for the Lord, making it a day of rest, just like God rested after creation. Makes sense. But when the Pharisees wrapped their culture of legalism around it, things went awry. All the Pharisaic hedge rules were contained in something called the Halakha, which was later documented in the Mishnah. In these rules were definitions for everything. I mean, with regard to the Sabbath, they asked the question, well, what's considered work? One of the many definitions they came up with was to carry a burden. But then you had to ask, well, what's a burden? Here's a brief excerpt of their definition for a burden. Food equal in weight to a dried fig, enough wine for mixing in a goblet, milk enough for one swallow, honey enough to put upon a wound, oil enough to anoint a small member, water enough to moisten an eye salve, paper enough to write a customs house notice upon, ink enough to write 2 letters of the alphabet, reed enough to make a pen, and so on and so on. I mean, they even debated things like if a man could move a lamp from one side of the room to the other, or if he could lift up his child on the Sabbath. Anyway, these were the kind of people that Jesus was constantly rebelling against, and it came to a head in Matthew 12. It begins with Jesus and his disciples walking through some grain fields on the Sabbath. And his disciples start getting hungry, so they picked some grain heads as they were passing by and popped them in their mouth and was keeping it moving. Well, some Pharisees jumped all over the situation and were like, aha, Jesus, you're just letting your disciples break the Sabbath. Well, then just right after that, Jesus basically is going to the synagogue with his disciples, and he sees this man with a deformed hand. And the Pharisees jump all over that. Like, you know what, Jesus, before you even think about healing that man, because we know that's what you're thinking about doing. And he was, and he did. Riddle me this, Jesus. Is it lawful to do work like healing on the Sabbath? Straight entrapment. So check out Jesus' response to both confrontations. Regarding the whole grain field issue, this is what he says. Or have you not read in the law how on the Sabbath the priests in the temple profane the Sabbath and are guiltless? I tell you, something greater than the temple is here. And if you had known what it means, I desire mercy and not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the guiltless, for the Son of Man is the Lord of the Sabbath. He's basically saying priests do their priestly work in the temple on the Sabbath and they're not guilty. Why? Because their work is about doing things for God, preparing the temple as a place of worship for God on His Sabbath. How much more then are the disciples guiltless for picking grains to keep up their strength to follow the Lord of the Sabbath? With regard to the healing people on the Sabbath issue, here's how Jesus responds to that. Which one of you has a sheep, if it falls into a pit on the Sabbath, will not take hold of it and lift it out? How much more valuable is a man than a sheep? So it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath. Then he said to the man, stretch out your hand, and the man stretched it out, and it was restored, healthy like the other. And the Pharisees went out and conspired against him how to destroy him. And I guess that pretty much sums up the cause behind Jesus' rebellion. Compassion. Jesus was not rebelling against the command of God about the Sabbath. He was rebelling against the uncompassionate application of his Father's commands that made life burdensome for the very people the Sabbath was supposed to be bringing a godly rest to. You know, that whole Sabbath was made for man, not man made for the Sabbath? Right. The reality is that the Pharisees, they had made their culture more valuable than even the lives of people. They'd rather see people go hungry and have deformities than to go against their culture of rules. And to a righteous rebel like Jesus, that was simply unacceptable. I'll end with this week's words for thinking. Be ready to take a stand to show that people are more important than policy, the minority is just as valuable as the majority, and compassion overrides culture, always. That's what makes a righteous rebel. Now, take some time during your day and reflect on the Think a Little Deeper questions posted below this video. And don't be shy, be heard. Share your reflections by posting a comment. Well, this concludes this month's SyncUp series, Righteous Rebellion. Be on the lookout for an announcement about the new upcoming SyncUp series. Until next time, remember, do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly. Bye for now, everyone.